A human engineer was left to die on an alien station instead. He rebuilt it better than ever. Marcus Chen stood at the viewport of Outpost Delta 9, watching the last Calaxian shuttle disappear into the void of space. Taking a long sip from his coffee mug, which proudly declared, "Universe's okayest engineer," in fading letters, he tried to process what had just happened. "Dave," he called out to the station's AI, "would you mind explaining to me again why our esteemed Calaxian colleagues just performed the fastest evacuation I've seen since my college roommate discovered week-old takeout in his bed?" The AI's monotonous voice echoed through the empty control room. According to Chief Engineer Kazak, the station is experiencing critical system failures in approximately 82.7% of all primary and secondary systems. Marcus snorted. "Right, and I'm the Queen of Mars." He walked over to the main control panel, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. "Run a real diagnostic for me, would you? And please, for the love of caffeine, use human engineering parameters this time." "Processing," Dave replied. "Would you like me to use the standard parameters or what you call the actually make sense settings?" "Look who's developing a sense of humor," Marcus muttered, setting down his coffee mug on a surface specifically not designed for human beverages. "The latter, please." 3 minutes and 27 seconds later, Marcus counted. As he had nothing better to do while potentially dying in space, Dave returned with results that made him laugh so hard he almost choked on his coffee. Station integrity at 94.3%, minor fluctuations in the thermal regulation system, slight variance in artificial gravity in Section 7. Cafeteria food synthesizer still producing everything with a slight taste of pickled socks. Marcus wiped tears from his eyes. "So what you're telling me is that our dear Calaxian friends evacuated a perfectly functional station because their overly complicated systems showed some readings they didn't like." "Affirmative, although they did leave behind a rather extensive report detailing why this station is doomed and why they had no choice but to abandon it. Would you like me to read it?" "Let me guess. It's written in triplicate, contains at least 57 references to their engineering regulations, and probably blames human integration protocols for everything." 73 references, actually, and they specifically mentioned your habit of fixing things that aren't broken as a contributing factor to the station's imminent doom. Marcus walked over to the environmental controls, which the Calaxians had insisted on making so complex that it took 3 degrees and a certification in quantum mechanics just to adjust the temperature. "Well, Dave, looks like it's just you and me now. Want to help me turn this overcomplicated mess into something that actually makes sense?" "I suppose I have no choice in the matter," Dave replied, managing to sound both resigned and amused. "Though I should warn you that tampering with Calaxian engineering is a violation of at least 36 different regulations." Marcus grinned, already rolling up his sleeves. "Only 36? They must be slipping." He pulled up the station schematics on the main display. "Let's start with that thermal regulation system. I've been wanting to fix that unnecessary cooling loop in Section D ever since they insisted on installing it. Shall I prepare the standard incident report forms for when this inevitably goes wrong?" "No, Dave," Marcus said, reaching for his toolkit. "Prepare the incident report forms for when this inevitably goes right, and they can't handle how simple and effective it is." And with that, Marcus Chen, the last human engineer on Outpost Delta 9, began what would become either the greatest achievement of his career or the most spectacular failure in human-alien engineering history. Probably both, if he was being honest with himself. At least he had coffee, for now. 3 days into his unplanned solo mission to prove alien engineering wrong, Marcus was elbow-deep in what the Calaxians called an atmospheric harmonization matrix, but what he'd mentally renamed the most ridiculous air filter ever created. "Dave," he asked, carefully disconnecting yet another redundant power coupling, Please explain to me why they needed 17 different processing chambers to do what Earth ships accomplish with 3. According to the Galaxian Engineering Handbook, Section 47.2.3, the multiple chambers ensure optimal air purity through sequential refinement processes that was rhetorical, buddy. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grease. Also, I'm pretty sure they just liked the pretty lights it made when air moved through all those unnecessary crystal chambers. The crystalline resonance chambers are a crucial part of their filtration philosophy, Dave noted, somehow managing to sound both defensive and skeptical. Their filtration philosophy needs therapy. Marcus pulled out another crystal, adding it to the growing pile of fancy but useless components beside him. Watch this. Oxygen levels are going to improve by at least 15% once I'm done simplifying this monstrosity. I feel compelled to remind you that removing authorized components violates, let me guess, another 36 regulations. 42 this time. The crystals are considered sacred technology. Marcus paused his work to take a swig from his thermos. Sacred technology that's actually just pretty quartz with some bioluminescent algae trapped inside. I analyzed them yesterday. The Galaxians would be horrified to learn their sacred crystals are, as you put it in your notes, fancy lava lamps doing absolutely nothing but vibing. Close. The Galaxians aren't here, Dave. They left us to die in their perfectly functional station because their overcomplicated systems scared them with bad readings. Marcus reconnected the main power supply to his streamlined version of the air system. Now, let's see if human engineering can turn their 17-step dance into a simple waltz. The system hummed to life, significantly quieter than before. The various displays that usually flickered with hundreds of unnecessary readings now showed simple, clear metrics. Oxygen levels stabilizing, Dave reported. Air quality improving. Temperature regulation operating at 99.8% efficiency. A pause. I don't understand. You removed 82% of the components. I removed 82% of the complications, Marcus corrected, closing the access panel with a satisfied pat. Sometimes less is more, especially when more is just there to make pretty lights and satisfy someone's bureaucratic checklist. Over the next few days, Marcus continued his one-man crusade against overcomplicated engineering. The water recycling system, which had previously required 3 different AI subroutines just to flush a toilet, was simplified down to a system that would make any Earth plumber proud. The waste management system, which the Galaxians had somehow tied into the station's quantum positioning array, why? Marcus had asked repeatedly while fixing that particular mess, now operated independently, as it should. I have to admit, Dave said one evening as Marcus enjoyed his dinner of synthesized pasta, which still tasted vaguely of pickled socks. The station is operating 43% more efficiently than under Galaxian protocols. And using how much less power? 67.3% less power consumption across all systems. Marcus twirled his pasta with a flourish. Which means we now have enough surplus power to run that coffee maker you've been trying to modify for the past week, Dave conceded. See, priorities. Marcus grinned, though he added, I still need to figure out how to make it stop producing coffee that tastes like it was filtered through an alien's idea of what coffee should taste like. Marcus was wrestling with the gravity plating in Section 7 when Dave interrupted his string of creative curses with an unexpected announcement. Marcus, I'm detecting an approaching vessel, Villian trading ship, designation Lucky Prophet. They're broadcasting a distress signal. Wiping his hands on his already grease-stained jumpsuit, Marcus frowned. Villians. Those are the ones with the crystalline exoskeletons and really bad poker faces, right? Correct. Though I believe the proper term for their outer layer is bioluminescent dermal plating. They're requesting emergency docking clearance. Their primary drive system is malfunctioning. Marcus glanced around at his half-finished gravity repair. Well, This should be interesting. They're probably expecting a fully staffed Calaxian station, not one slightly caffeinated human with a toolbox and a sarcastic AI. Should I inform them of the station's current administrative situation? No, let's make it a surprise. Everyone loves surprises, right? Authorize their docking request. At least our docking systems are working better than ever since I removed those ridiculous automated alignment crystals. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood at the airlock, watching as 3 Villian traders made their way aboard, their crystalline bodies catching the station's lights, creating rainbow refractions across the walls. The lead trader, whose plating had a distinctly bluish tinge, stopped short upon seeing Marcus. "You are human," the Villian stated, managing to sound both surprised and suspicious. "Last time I checked, yeah." Marcus gave them his best, totally professional smile. Marcus Chen, station engineer and current sole occupant of Outpost Delta 9. "Heard you folks were having drive problem." The 3 Villians exchanged glances, their plating flickering with what Marcus recognized as confusion. The blue one spoke again. "Where are the Calaxian?" "Oh, them? They evacuated about 2 weeks ago. Something about critical system failures and imminent doom. You know how dramatic they can get about their engineering." "Yet, you remained?" The second Villian, sporting a greenish tint, stepped forward. "Someone had to stay and fix their overcomplicated mess," Marcus shrugged. "Speaking of fixing things, want to tell me what's wrong with your drive?" The blue Villian's plating flickered with hesitation. "Our quantum field harmonizer has destabilized. The Calaxians installed it last season, but it's never functioned quite right." Marcus couldn't help but grin. "Let me guess, lots of pretty lights, unnecessarily complex control systems, and a maintenance manual thicker than my arm." All 3 Villians lit up with what he recognized as agreement. "Perfect. That's exactly the kind of overcomplicated nonsense I've been fixing around here." Marcus rubbed his hands together. "Dave, want to help our guests run a diagnostic while I grab my toolkit?" "Of course," Dave replied through the station speakers, causing the Villians to flicker in surprise, though I should note that offering unauthorized assistance with non-standard repairs violates, let me guess, another 40 regulations. 57 this time. The quantum field harmonizer is considered especially sacred technology. The green Villian's plating rippled with what might have been amusement. "Modified is such a strong word," Marcus said, already heading for his workshop. "I prefer to think of it as giving Dave the freedom to be himself. Come on, let's take a look at that drive system." 4 hours later, Marcus emerged from the Villian engine room covered in various fluids but wearing a satisfied smile. Behind him, the quantum field harmonizer hummed with a smooth, steady tone it had never managed under Calaxian specifications. "I still don't understand," the blue Villian, who had introduced himself as Trading Captain Zix, said. "You removed nearly half the components." "Half the unnecessary components," Marcus corrected, wiping his hands. "Turns out you don't need 3 separate field alignment matrices when one properly calibrated one does the job better. Who knew, right? Our drive efficiency has increased by 34%, the third Villian, a navigator with amber plating, reported with obvious amazement. "Just wait until you see your power consumption readings," Marcus grinned. "Dave, want to share the good news?" The Villian vessel Lucky Prophet is now operating at 147% of its previous efficiency rating while consuming 52% less power, Dave announced. "I've taken the liberty of documenting all modifications for their records, minus the 17 pages of unnecessary regulatory appendices." Captain Zix's crystalline form shimmered with what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of shocked laughter. "This is unprecedented. The Calaxians assured us their design was optimal." "Yeah, they say that a lot," Marcus shrugged. "Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. Though fair warning, they might not be too happy when they find out I stripped out all their sacred technology and replaced it with something that actually works. They will not hear it from us." The green villain promised, their plating glowing with sincerity. But others will. There are many trading vessels in this sector struggling with similar Galaxian modification. Well, Marcus said, suddenly realizing what he might have started. My docking bay is always open, as long as you don't mind dealing with a human engineer and his slightly rebellious AI. As the Villian traders prepared to depart, Captain Zix turned to Marcus one last time. We will spread word of this station. There are many who would prefer engineering that functions over engineering that merely looks impressive. Just try not to make it sound too dramatic, Marcus called after them. I don't want everyone thinking I'm running some kind of miracle workshop out here. Too late, Dave commented as they watched the Lucky Prophet depart, its drive humming more smoothly than ever. I'm already detecting increased communications chatter about the human miracle worker at Outpost Delta 9. Marcus groaned. Great, just what I needed, a reputation. How many regulations does that violate? I've lost count, Dave replied cheerfully. Though I suggest we stock up on coffee. Something tells me we're about to get much busier. Looking at the departing trading ship, Marcus couldn't help but smile. You know what, Dave? I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful revolution in engineering. And a massive headache for Galaxian bureaucrats everywhere. That's just a bonus. 3 months after the Villian traders' visit, Outpost Delta 9 had become something the Galaxians would never have imagined possible: efficient. Dave, what's our visit count this week? Marcus asked, calibrating what had once been a needlessly complex food synthesizer into something that could finally produce coffee that didn't taste like it had been filtered through an alien's understanding of Earth beverages. We have 17 vessels currently docked, representing 12 different species, Dave reported, and there's a waiting list of 23 more ships requesting maintenance stop. Also, the Xenians in Bay 4 are still insisting on paying you in rare crystalline formation. Tell them credits work just fine. I'm running out of places to store shiny rocks. Marcus stepped back to admire his work. All right, coffee test number 47. Give it a try. A mechanical arm extended from the wall grabbed a cup and initiated the brewing sequence. The resulting liquid was actually brown this time, which Marcus counted as progress. You know, Dave mused as Marcus took a cautious sip, when you started converting Storage Bay 2 into what you called a proper coffee shop, I calculated a 92% probability of failure. Marcus grinned over his cup of finally decent coffee. And now the Spite and Sprockets Cafe has become the most popular gathering spot on the station. Though I still question your choice of name. Hey, it was either that or Sacred Technology Coffee House, and I didn't want to push my luck. The cafe had indeed become the heart of the transformed station. What started as Marcus's personal quest for decent coffee had evolved into a space where beings from across the galaxy could gather, exchange stories, and most importantly, discuss how their Galaxian-engineered systems could be simplified. Speaking of pushing luck, Dave interrupted his thoughts. The Androman merchant in Bay 7 wants to know if you can look at their navigation system. Apparently, the Galaxians installed a mandatory upgrade that requires 3 different AIs just to plot a simple course. Only 3? They're slipping. Marcus finished his coffee. Tell them I'll be there after I finish installing the human-style redundancy systems in Section F. And remind them that if they try to pay in sacred crystals, I'm sending them to the back of the waiting list. The station had evolved far beyond its original purpose. What was once a quiet outpost had become a bustling hub of activity, with ships from all corners of the galaxy seeking out the human engineer who could make their overcomplicated systems actually work. Marcus had even started teaching. Today's lesson, he announced to a group of alien engineers, each clutching their equivalent of a coffee cup, is about the beauty of bypass circuits. Or as I like to call it, why you don't need quantum entanglement to flush a toilet. It was ironically during a lecture on why quantum uncertainty doesn't belong in a coffee maker that Dave interrupted with news Marcus had been both expecting and dreading. Marcus, I'm detecting an incoming Calaxian administrative fleet, 5 vessels including the station's original command ship. The assembled group of alien engineers in Spite and Sprocket's cafe all turned their various sensory organs toward Marcus, who took a deliberately long sip of his coffee. "Well," he said finally, "I guess it's time to face the music, though in Calaxian terms that probably means facing a 17-part harmony with quantum oscillation overtones. They're requesting immediate docking clearance," Dave reported. "Their message includes 43 pages of regulatory citations and, oh my, they've detected our modifications to their sacred technology." Marcus stood up, straightening his jumpsuit. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate configuration, class is dismissed. Unless you want to stick around for what I suspect will be a rather interesting lesson in interspecies diplomacy." Most of his students decided to stay. After all, entertainment like this didn't come along every day. The Calaxians made their entrance exactly as Marcus expected, with excessive ceremony and blinking lights. Chief Engineer Kazak led the procession, their segmented exoskeleton bristling with what Marcus had learned to recognize as maximum bureaucratic outrage. Human Engineer Marcus Chen. Kazak began, their translator struggling to convey the proper level of indignation. "You have committed 9,472 violations of sacred engineering protocols." "Only that many?" Marcus took another sip of his coffee. "I must have missed a few systems." You. Kazak's segments rippled in agitation as they looked around the cafe, a room that had previously housed their sacred atmospheric harmonization crystal storage. "What have you done to our station?" "Fixed it," Marcus replied simply. "Coffee?" The offering of the station's most popular beverage only seemed to agitate Kazak further. "Fixed it? You have removed 67% of our sacred technology. The quantum field harmonizers, the crystalline resonance chambers, the 17-stage atmospheric purification system. All replaced with systems that actually work," interrupted a familiar voice. Captain Zix of the Lucky Prophet stepped forward from the crowd of onlookers, their crystalline form gleaming. "This station has become the most efficient and reliable port in 12 sectors." "Efficiency is not the point," Kazak protested. "The sacred technologies are pretty," Marcus cut in, standing up, "but unnecessary. Dave, would you mind sharing our current operational statistics?" "Of course," Dave replied, and Marcus noticed with pride that the AI had dropped its formal Calaxian protocols entirely. Under current human-modified systems, station efficiency has increased by 312%, power consumption has decreased by 67%, traffic has increased by 844%. Also, the coffee no longer tastes like it was filtered through a quantum uncertainty field. "That last bit's still a work in progress," Marcus admitted. But the regulations, the sacred harmonies, the proper way of." "Let me show you something," Marcus interrupted, leading the Calaxian delegation to the main engineering control room. The sleek, simplified control panels were a far cry from the complex array of blinking crystals they'd left behind. "This is what your station looks like when you stop worrying about making things look impressive and focus on making them work." He pulled up the station's operational diagrams. "Single-stage atmospheric recycling that works better than your 17-stage system. Simple, reliable power distribution without quantum uncertainty. And yes, we still have some crystals, but now they're just for decoration. In the cafe." "The cafe?" one of the junior Calaxian engineers whispered in horror. "Which, by the way, has become the most popular meeting spot for engineers from 12 different species." Marcus gestured to the gathered crowd of aliens, many clutching their coffee cups. "Turns out a lot of people prefer engineering they can understand over engineering they have to worship." Kazak was silent for a long moment, their segments shifting through various shades of confusion and denial. Finally they spoke. "But how can it be sacred if it's simple?" Marcus smiled. Maybe because it works. Because it brings people together. Because it makes their lives better. He gestured around at the thriving station. Look, I haven't destroyed your sacred technology, I've just helped it evolve into something more practical. The junior Calaxian engineers were already moving closer to the control panels, their natural curiosity overtaking their institutional resistance. One of them let out a small chirp of surprise. The power flow, it's so clean. And look at the atmospheric readings. Is that maintenance schedule only 1 page long? Kazakh watched their junior engineers with what Marcus recognized as a mix of horror and fascination. This is unprecedented. That's one word for it, Marcus agreed. I prefer to call it progress. Now, would you like that coffee? I've finally gotten the synthesizer to understand that sacred bean juice isn't actually a flavor. In the end, it took 17 meetings, 43 regulatory revisions, and 12 cups of coffee. But the Calaxians finally accepted that their sacred technology might benefit from some human simplification. They even agreed to let Marcus continue running the station, though they insisted on adding a small shrine of decorative crystals to the cafe, just to maintain some traditions. You know, Dave commented later as Marcus watched the Calaxian fleet depart, this time without evacuating, I calculate that this entire incident has violated exactly 1,000 sacred protocols. Marcus grinned, raising his coffee cup in a toast. Only 1,000? Well, there's always tomorrow. And so Outpost Delta 9 continued its evolution, becoming a place where sacred technology learned to coexist with simple solutions, where engineers of all species could gather to share ideas and coffee, and where one human's practical approach to problem-solving had inadvertently started a quiet revolution in galactic engineering. Though Marcus did agree to keep just a few crystals around, they did, after all, make pretty good coffee cup coasters.